Hey guys, this is Paula Frost, and you're listening to Way Out Radio. Right now, we're talking about this amazing new book, Pearl Jam and the Present Tense by Ronen Givony. And he's the author also of 24-Hour Revenge Therapy. And he's which is part of the Bloomsbury 33 and a Third series. He's also the founder of New York's Wordless Music series and a native of South Florida. And he's worked as a producer for concert venues and music festivals in the US and abroad. How you doing, Ronen?
Great. Nice to be with you, Paula.
It's great to have you, man. So, where are you right now?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York, just about 20 minutes south of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a bit of a rainy day here, but probably similar to London weather.
You poor thing. So, what's the situation like in Brooklyn right now? Is it what kind of level of lockdown are you on?
Thanks for asking. It's in New York, it's probably a bit better than in most other parts of the U.S., but I think most of us are hopefully going to feel a lot better in about 18, 19 days time. Just trying to make the best of the situation and hopefully moving on to something more positive for us and for everyone in the world.
Yeah, certainly. And we were really disappointed because Pearl Jam cancelled their massive shows that they were going to do in the UK. Did you miss out on a Pearl Jam show because of this year?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, my deadline actually for to the send it to the printer was around March or April, and they were supposed to be playing in Canada and then playing a bunch of shows in the States, Madison Square Garden, and the West Coast, and then in Europe too. So that was my sort of flagrant self-congratulation upon turning the manuscript, but along with everything else that got upended, and fingers crossed that it can happen next summer.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's what we're all hoping for. Get the public health back to where it should be so we can go to gigs again. Come on. Just feels like at the moment
Absolutely.
they're just allowing like you to go to work but not do anything fun. And I'm just like, I don't know how long this is gonna people are gonna cope with that for, because like we need some kind of balance, you know?
Absolutely. There, where I live in Brooklyn, it's right next to a neighborhood called Red Hook, which is right by the water. And there's been just in the last few weeks a couple of very small scale outdoor, sort of socially distanced concerts, outside an art gallery. And, it's maybe 50, 75 people gathered. But it's just been, really, you can't overstate what we're all missing without hearing just live music in the company of friends and strangers. So yeah, really hope to get back to it soon.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So first of all, this book is like seriously heavyweight book. So how many pages we got here? Over 400 pages. So how long did it take you to put this all together?
About 4 years.
Wow, 4 years. Excellent.
Yeah.
And did you have it finished before lockdown?
um the first, so in New York, I think most people would call March and April sort of our first 2 months of serious lockdown, and that was when I was writing. So I sort of thought to myself at first, this is not that different from the life of a freelance writer like on deadline, but rapidly that became not funny, and then and yeah, so the book has definitely changed as a result of those events. I try to talk about it a little bit at the end,
Yeah.
really how, like, you know I, this band, I think, is special because of their fan base and their audience, and it's an audience that will think nothing of seeing 5 or 10 shows on a tour, because every show is so conspicuously different. And really, just now more than ever, even if they played the most, even if they played the same thing, I think 30 nights in a row, it was just that feeling of people assembling, and especially in the shows in Europe, there's so many people from the States who travel, from South America who travel, and it's yeah, so if this were not happening, I think it's fair to say that the ending of the book would have been, probably a fair amount different.
Yeah, definitely. I've been writing a book myself for a couple of years, and lockdown helped me finish it. I was just like, okay, I can finally
Congrats.
get this done. So that was the one positive thing.
What's the
um,
book about?
well, I spent 2 years on the road, or like a year on the road, doing this show from 14 different countries. So it's called DIY DJ, and it's just about me like trying to make it to the next country and like DJing in different places and meeting the punks in like Russia and Japan and stuff.
That sounds great. I'd love to read it.
Awesome, man. Thank you. I'll send you a copy, definitely. All right. So Pearl Jam, you've made some really serious quotes like about this band. So one of them is Pearl Jam were the finest American rock group of the 90s. So I mean, of course I agree with that, but we want to convince other people as well. So why Pearl Jam over Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Red Hot Chili Peppers? What is it about these guys?
Yeah. Well, I love all those bands, first and foremost. And I try to talk a bit in the book about how, what was so special about that moment was, not just one or two, three artists in isolation. It really felt like this tidal wave and this perfect storm of, young bands who, kind of believed in this really romantic, old-fashioned notion of music kind of having positive social impact and change. Um, Nirvana, I think, they were obviously the first ones to, explode out of the gate. And for a long time, Pearl Jam were, I think they would say themselves in Nirvana's shadow. I think at a certain point, you know, you can sort of argue whether this would have happened if Kurt Cobain had remained alive or not. But, I think right around Versus, Vitalogy, Merkin No Code, you get to a moment where I think Pearl Jam kind of experiences the sense of artistic freedom, and I think when they get to No Code, it's almost like they're operating in a zone where it's as though Nirvana had never existed, and so, to me at least, they had this run in the mid '90s from, I don't even include Ten in this, even though that's obviously their blockbuster, but for me, as a listener, Versus to Vitalogy to No Code to Yield, that, I think is four or five albums is a run that can stand really with, most of the great bands of the '90s, and I think even before, it's hard to think of that many bands with, even two or three great records, and again, the '90s, were unusual in that you had, I mean, Guided by Voices had three or four great records. Fugazi had three or four great records. Built to Spill had three or four great records. Slater Kinney
Mm.
had multiple great records, and yet, um, you know, in the reshuffling kind of how this moment is considered, I think in history, it's there's times where it seems like, at least as it's written, it's Nirvana and everybody else. And I think that for those of us who lived through it and who, who still kind of uh, have appreciation for this music, this was just a bit of an attempt at kind of balancing the record a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And for any listeners right now who are sort of thinking they're not sure about Pearl Jam, I'll just give you a few stats. So they're a Seattle group, recorded 11 studio albums, five of which reached number one. They sold over 85 million records and played over 1,000 shows in 50 different countries. So, Ronan, how did you discover them first of all, and like what turned them from just a band into something more for you?
Yeah, I was, in 1991 when those records, Nevermind and 10 came out, within a month of each other. I was 12 years old going on 13, which is the perfect age to fall in love with anything.
Yeah,
I, you know, I was not an especially musical kid. I didn't play an instrument, but for whatever reason, maybe it was just, I don't think it was that special to me or my group of friends, but for whatever reason, you went to school and you went home and then you turned on MTV and that was just what you did. Like and so and then the next day you go to school and you talk about what you see. And so, you know, when the Alive video came out, when the Jeremy video came out, that was I mean, seventh, eighth grade, and yeah, it was, it was really, it, in hindsight, it was kind of, I try to mention in the book how, like, if I think if I had been born just a couple years earlier or a couple years later, what we would have been listening to would have been, either sort of Motley Crue, Bon Jovi kind of heavy metal, like a little bit earlier, or like, you know, Limp Bizkit and Creed and Korn and all that, like on the later end. And for a couple of years in the 90s, it was strange that, like, the biggest bands and the greatest rock gods were, men who wore dresses and had mascara and it was Michael Stipe and Billy Corgan and Zach De La Rocha and Trent Reznor and Eddie Vedder. And yeah, I think that, for me, like, and for a lot of people, it was the music, but it was also, it was learning about how to be, an adult in a way, and learning politics, at a time when, so I think that era for a lot of people, still holds like a bit of romance. And you wonder if, there had not been MTV, if there had not been sort of the saturation of radio, and maybe, there was really still no internet for a couple of years. I don't think it would have happened the same way, but, it it definitely implanted itself, I think, on a certain generation very indelibly.
Yeah, certainly, definitely. So, all of this music was coming from Seattle at the time. I mean, have you been to Seattle many times? Have you got experiences there?
I've been a couple of times. Yeah, I think every lover of that era makes like kind of a pilgrimage at some point. I
Yeah.
went for the first time, actually. I'll never forget. It was in 2005, and it just happened to be, the week that Hurricane Katrina happened.
Oh
So,
wow.
that week, Pearl Jam was playing at this venue called the Gorge in, Eastern Washington State. It's, one of the most beautiful venues in the United States. It's kind of like Red Rocks. Um, and, Ed talked about the hurricane as it was happening, and said, we're gonna, we recorded a bunch of music in New Orleans. We're gonna, give some money from the show. So that was my first time there, and I've since been back a few times. I was there about a year ago. There's an exhibit, at the Museum of Pop Culture that, is really worth seeing. So yeah, I like Seattle a lot. And I think, I was mentioning this to someone the other day, like, this was a woman in Australia, and she said, in the 90s, we all like fantasize about Seattle. What is this, magical place where all these amazing people come from? And I was telling her, I lived in Florida, which is on to the same country, opposite coast, and we felt the same way. We felt it was, Paris and swinging London, like wrapped into one.
Yeah, no, definitely. Um, so I noticed that when you read this book, then of course it has the capacity to be a a total academic journal. I mean, it's the first like full biography about Pearl Jam, but then there's like loads of swearing and like there's a lot of slang and stuff like that. So at what point was the decision made for you to be like, okay, this is for fans, you know?
Mm. Thanks for asking that. This was a really important, question to me, really all along. And to be honest, it changed quite a bit. I think at the very beginning, when I first got the idea to write it, I thought, this is a book for diehard fans. This is a book for, the converted. And as I was writing it, I think I learned at a certain point, like, kind of two things. One, that their story, really does intersect with, in a very uncanny way, with just the events of the last 30 years, really to an extent that I was surprised by. And the second point, I think, and, this was, something I really tried to think a lot about. Pearl Jam is a band, I think, that appeals to a lot of different kinds of people. They appeal to, you know, policemen and firemen and school bus drivers and journalists and writers and whatever. And I wanted at least to it seemed to me that it's not every band that it's easy to write like an whatever experimental techno track that five of your friends like, but it's hard to write a song that people from different cultures and different languages and different ages can sing along to. And I tried to kind of use that approach in my writing a little bit, just to make it accessible and to make it a book that maybe people who don't buy 10 books a year will pick up and find welcoming, because it seemed to me that a band that kind of did justice to the ethos of Pearl Jam like should be democratic and welcoming and accessible.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. No, that makes a big difference. So I wanted to ask about Bad Radio, Eddie's first band. He kind of dropped them to join Pearl Jam. Do you think that he was looking to portray a new image? And what do you feel about, like you mentioned in the book, about him sort of putting on this angry persona
Mm.
to gain the band attention?
Yeah, well, I, to clarify, I think he left Bad Radio, and then several months later he met Jeff and Stone quite serendipitously, and then all that happened. So I'm not sure it was kind of a leaving one to do the other, but you're definitely right that I think in that 1 or 2 year period, if you compare Bad Radio, there's a couple Bad Radio shows on YouTube to early Pearl Jam to even like 1993. There's very different personas on display. And I tried to talk about how when this side of him came to light, I think after they became famous and after people started digging into his past, it was very easy for a lot of people to look at this and say, wow, what a phony Eddie Vedder is. This whole pose, this whole stance of being a reluctant rock star is a pose. And it's like, if you think that there's no marketing, that's the most brilliant kind of marketing of all. But I at that point in the story, and I think consistently throughout, I tried to be objective or honest about what was happening and describe what was happening on screen, but I also tried to be just fair and respectful and to to talk about, this was a 25-year-old kid, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
God help me if my 25-year-old self were on YouTube and publicly available to everyone. So he was growing up in public, and all of us grew up in our 20s, but he was doing it on millions of screens. And so I was trying to illustrate just kind of like what are the pressures of someone who goes from an unknown band in San Diego to the cover of Time magazine in 3 years.
Yeah, sure. Especially when he didn't want to be on the cover of Time magazine, they just stole his image. um, so I wanted to ask you a bit about, like, what other books you look to help you write yours, because you must have done a hell of a lot of research.
Mm. Yeah, I tried to do my diligence and just read as much as I could about what has been written about the 90s, both in terms of music and culture. Not surprisingly, Nirvana, there's, something like a dozen books about them by now. They, they range from like the very, very good comprehensive biographies. Like I would call Everett True's book about Nirvana extremely good. Their former manager, Danny Goldberg, published a book that came out this past year. I also just tried to read a lot and to look at the literature of music criticism and to find out like what were other books that had just looked at a band from beginning to end. That was not biography, that was not oral history, but you know and this is maybe a different subject, but I feel like for all the great music that rock and roll has produced, for all the great bands and artists, the actual number of books that have been written, as criticism, like literary criticism, film criticism, you could probably count on two hands. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
and in terms of, who the Pauline Kael or the Frank Kermode or the, you know, Vincent Scully of music criticism. I mean, there's a book about, I don't want to single him out, but there's a book about The Doors by Greil Marcus, which I thought, I found this book and I thought, okay, this is like what I need. And it's basically unreadable, I mean, I, I like Greil Marcus so much. I learned so much from him. But if you pick up this book, it's like, it's literally impossible to make heads or tails of it. And I realized at a certain point that, like, to a certain extent, I'm not sure that, like, these bands have been written about, like, in terms of appreciation, like,
Mm,
like, not like, where was Kurt Cobain born, where did he go to high school, but like, why is this music still listened to, and why is it
yeah.
important? And that's what's really encouraging, is that there's still so much of this to be written about.
Yeah, definitely. It's like when I was at uni, you just reminded me. I actually wrote an essay and we could choose a band to write it on, and it was like talk about bands that have crossed over from underground to mainstream. So I chose Pearl Jam and the grunge movement, and I got a really bad mark for it because they just said like you don't have any references. There weren't any books that I could like latch onto and say like here's the proof. So then after that, I wrote all my essays on the Beatles because like I could reference them so much. There's like a stack of books to
Right.
just say like, here's my backup. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of
Yeah,
punk bands as well.
no,
Sorry, I was just going to quickly say,
you're
like you, if you looked at the punk scene, you'd go, oh, it's like all Sex Pistols and all the Clash. Well, where's the book on Cockney
yeah,
Rejects or Stiff Little Fingers? That's it.
yes, or Crass, yeah.
Yeah,
um yeah, no, it's, I mean, I found at a certain point that I had to start reading about jazz, and I had to start reading about classical music and blues and gospel, because that's really where the great writing in music, at least in American music criticism, I think, has been about. Black music has not been about rock and roll.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so you mentioned that Pearl Jam shaped the way that a whole generation thought about music. So going beyond the boundaries of like just kids listening to records, it changed their perception of the music. So could you just tell me a bit about what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think that, on the one hand, they had songs that everyone loved, and that was, why everyone was wearing flannel, and and obsessed with Seattle for a few years. But I think beyond that, beyond, the songs that you can pull up on a playlist, um, you know, Pearl Jam, Rage Against the Machine, Nirvana, I think that, in their refusal to be, sort of packaged as, yet another boy band, as yet another kind of pop phenomenon, um, they they insisted on the point that, music is not just about music, that it's about, people's attitudes, and it's about audiences, and about spectators, and you know, for a while, Pearl Jam, deliberately took themselves off the road. They deliberately, charged 18 or $20 for tickets when, they could have charged 60, 80, 100. They played theaters, for 2,000 people when they could have been playing stadiums. Um, it was a rare time of kind of refusal. And I'm someone who likes hip hop a lot, but like, it's hard to imagine, Jay-Z saying, I'm not going to make a video, or, like, just a whole, slate of artists, questioning capitalism and profit motive. These were bands that
Yeah.
were on major labels, and they were always sort of, susceptible to the charge of, like, if you're so radical, why are you not on Discord like Fugazi? But I think there's something to be said for, you know, putting out a record on Sony, and yet, doing what Rage Against the Machine did, which is like including a list of 25 books, from Howard Zinn to, Noam Chomsky. Um, Pearl Jam, consistently put their name on the line, from everything, including reproductive rights to police brutality to, militarism and creeping right-wing culture. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this is not the case today, but I think that, to speak for myself personally, um, this was how many of us came of consciousness. And I'm not sure that a 12 or 13-year-old boy in the suburbs, would have understood otherwise, like why, writing pro-choice on your arm on MTV, in front of tens of millions of people, like why, why, how that's not the normal course of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it was about music, but it was about art and commerce and entertainment and activism and idealism, and it has not really been forgotten, I think, from anyone who loved those bands then.
Yeah, definitely. And you also mentioned about that the group has actually increased the sum of human happiness, communal connection, and the greater goodwill for many, many millions of people. Um, so, yeah, I just wanted to ask you, what kind of goodwill would you say like Pearl Jam has spread?
Hmm. Well, you know, it for me, it's kind of one of the rare forums, I think, in kind of music, that you can walk into a room of 20,000 people and have certain things in common, but have very real differences politically, artistically, personally. um, and there's a handful of bands, I think, that and artists that do bring people together. um, and that's not to say that they couldn't do a better job, and that's not to say that their audience can be more diverse,
Mm.
but um, yeah, so many people have met their boyfriends and girlfriends and spouses and partners, friends and collaborators at Pearl Jam shows. I often say that it's like Pearl Jam mode, like where when they're on tour, you kind of activate the network of your friends who are who are going to go see half a dozen shows, and you try to align your travel plans. And yeah, I you know I think that there's times when you look at an arena of 15 or 20,000 people, and it's easy to look askance of it in certain ways. But there's also you know uh, you're playing music for people, and they're coming together for uh, a time that like is distinctly different from the routine of their everyday lives. That seems very honorable to me. And I think that Pearl Jam is aware themselves that they have many people who are waiting for them to get back on the road, and that when it does happen again next, it will be that much more jubilant.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I know that you've seen the band over 50 times. So, I mean, what was your first show?
My first show was comparatively late. It was 1998. It was in Hartford, Connecticut. I was in college at the time, and this was actually the night after a kind of a historic show. They played at Madison Square Garden, I think, for the first time. And if you know about the show, it's they had kind of a campaign to play the song "Breath" from the single soundtrack. I really highly recommend, if you want just a great Pearl Jam moment, look up "Breath" at Madison Square Garden, 1998. And anyway, our show was the night after, or like 2 nights after. So they played "Breath" again, which we didn't know why it was special. And I'll always remember, there was very kind of aggressive security. And I think it was the last song, it was Porch. Ed said, we're just going to let everybody, come up in the aisles and, have fun, and just, chill out, let them do their thing. And it was like it was definitely a moment, of like hundreds or thousands of people kind of running. So that was the first time.
Cool.
I had tickets to an earlier show that that fell through, but it yeah. And uh, have been able to see them since in South America, in Italy, in Portugal, and it's yeah, it's I don't know. It's again, when it kicks back again, I think that I'm almost scared, like, to see like how people are going to react, just because it's going to be you almost take it for, we really did take it for granted, I think, after a while.
Yeah, no, excellent answer. Thank you. Um, so like in the book, you talk about their progress and success as a band, and you follow the journey as it unfolds. And you talk a lot about their planning. I mean, how much do you think of Pearl Jam's success was left to chance, and how many things do you think they planned that just didn't work?
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's a good question. For a while they were quite deliberate about things, maybe almost too deliberate in terms of kind of taking themselves off the road and just complicating their own existence in terms of you know, Ticketmaster and plotting tours. I think at a certain point they learned a little bit to ease up off the wheel a bit, and they kind of became, a professional rock band. Um, uh, I think that in terms of their longevity and in terms of, being still together 30 years later, I think if you had told them that in, April 1994, when Kurt Cobain died, I don't think anyone would have believed that Pearl Jam would have been around even a year or two. Like, for a while it was very precarious,
Yeah,
and at several points, I think there was an open question whether they would, you know, be breaking up or not. But after, I think, Roskilde in 2000, and I think after, you know, George Bush, and after, Iraq, I think that they started to just take a sort of comfort in, in knowing that that if they wanted to go to, uh, Calgary, they have 25,000 people who will play there. If they want to go to, six different towns in Brazil, there's many people who want to see them, and I think that they, it's again, it for them. I think that they were just in this Beatlemania moment, that it's kind of easy to forget that, like, it was about playing music in front of fans, and once that kind of came back to the fore, they were like, oh yeah, like, this is why we were doing this all along.
excellent. Yeah. And what kind of effect did Kurt Cobain's death have on you? Because you said that you were a fan from the first album.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's obvious from the book. It was a very big deal to me, and to, most people I knew. I don't know if it's overstating the case, but, I think, when 9/11 happened, the only thing that a lot of us had to compare it to was Kurt Cobain, because it was like, where were you that day, and who did you call, and you were watching on TV. Um, as these things have kind of faded into the, in a history, um, I wonder a little bit if that whole moment kind of means the same thing to, say, a young person today, discovering Nirvana and Pearl Jam versus myself. And
Mhm.
so, I tried in the middle of the book, there's a whole chapter devoted to the day, um, kind of to the concert Pearl Jam played after Kurt Cobain's death, and the memorial, the public memorial that they had in Seattle. Yeah, I think that for, a for a certain age person, that was John Lennon and JFK, and, the moon landing, like, all in one. And I think that's just also a testament to, like, how, a band that was together, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, um, could impact so many people and really just make a dent in the culture in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned about like some of the things that went wrong through the years of Pearl Jam and how they found like their comfort with each other and stuff. I just wanted to ask, like, what do you think has kept the band together so long? 'Cause it's been 30 years now, and apart from a few lineups, drummer changes, it's been the same guys, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good point. I think the guys themselves, like they're kind of a very interesting bond. They're not like best friends, I don't think, and I don't think they necessarily hang out all the time when they're not a band together, and that's, I think, part of why they've stuck around. I really think, though, 90% of it though is their audience. I think
Mm.
that it's not every band that can take 5, 6, 7 years between records and still go out on tour and still play 3 hours a night and still know, that they could play just as easily twice as many nights, and the demand would be there. I think it's not lost on them that that band is kind of greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm.
It's not a coincidence that Pearl Jam is such a robust infrastructure and team devoted to fan club and ticketing and merch and really fan service and loyalty, and making sure that people who have been in the fan club for 1 and 2 decades are always get the best seats and always get access. Yeah, it's you know I, I come back to this a lot. Like I think that there are a handful of bands like Pearl Jam. I think that there's U2 and Radiohead and such. I don't know though that like in aggregate these fan bases are as crazy like as Pearl Jam's. I really think that
Yeah.
there is just something really devoted, and special about it. And almost as much as the band, I tried to do justice to this community of listeners.
Yeah, definitely. And my dad is a crazy, crazy Pearl Jam fan. And obviously, like, all of us see them, like, every time they come on tour, we all love them. We got everything they've ever released. But dad is just like, you could literally go, oh, so I was just washing up and I was thinking I don't really like washing up. And he'd go, that's exactly why I like Pearl Jam, because the thing is about Eddie Vedder, and you're just like, I was literally not talking about anything to do with that. Every single thing just comes
That's your
back to
dad.
Pearl Jam. Yeah, yeah, it's my dad.
Awesome.
um, so a few quick questions to finish off. So thank you for joining us today. It's really awesome. So
Thank
favorite Pearl Jam album?
Definitely No Code.
Excellent. What did you think of the film by Cameron Crowe? 20.
I liked it very much. I watched it pretty soon after it came out, and kind of, during the 4 years I would be working on this book. I would kind of check in on it every 6 months and watch it and be like, oh yeah, like I need to, get to that part. Yeah, it's obviously the work of someone who loves the band, really knows their stuff, got really good access, and also was aware that many fans are going to be watching this, with bated breath, and wanted to get it right and did.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I booked my seat for that in the theater when it came out because it was a one night only thing. And I was
Yeah.
pretty amazed because I was just like, oh, okay, you can book your seat. And then I just thought, I wonder if seat number 10 is available. And it was. And I was like, yes, I was the first person to think of that.
Yeah. Should have put a gift under the seat.
Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts on Mother Love Bone? Do you like them?
Mixed.
Yeah.
Mixed. I am so on kind of 80s ish metal. I have friends who love,
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses and that whole that. It leaves me a little bit cold. I love Crown of Thorns, of course,
Yeah.
and Pearl Jam's version of it, and Mother Love Bone's original. When I heard it on the single soundtrack. Um, I love watching footage of Andy Wood because he seemed like such a delightful human, and just seemed like someone that even if you didn't like their music, you'd probably be at their show anyway, and thereby be won over. So yeah, you can't write about Pearl Jam without writing about Mother Love Bone, and I just tried to, you know, just give him some props where I could.
Excellent. Just a quick note for anybody listening in who doesn't know Mother Love Bone. So they're the band that most of the members of Pearl Jam were in before Eddie came along, and Andy Wood, the lead singer, unfortunately died tragically of a drug overdose. So they led up into Pearl Jam when the band went looking again for a singer. Okay, so thank you so much. And what have you got planned for the future, and where can people get this book?
Thanks. I'm trying to make good use of lockdown and tentatively kind of sketching out / researching a new book. Hopefully we'll have some interruptions and be able, not to be under quarantine and finish it. Yeah, I'm on the book has a social media account on Twitter. It's at PJ Not For You. And I've been posting kind of some outtakes from the book and a couple of things that sort of had to be cut. Yeah, Paul, just want to thank you for taking the time to read it and asking such thoughtful questions. It's been really nice to speak with you and your listeners.
Excellent, man. Thanks so much. You're welcome. And yeah, anytime it becomes part of my job to read a Pearl Jam book, I'm all ears, I'm all eyes. So
Awesome.
would you like to pick us a song to play on the radio?
Yeah, let's play present tense maybe, and also send my best to your dad. Would love to hear what he thinks of the book. It sounds like I better have my better come correct because he knows his stuff.
Yeah, this is his marker, right in the middle there. So he's read it pretty fast. That's been a week, so he's nearly there. All right, man. Well, take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
So long.
Bye. Hey guys, DJ Paula Frost here from Way Out Radio, the one and only punk and reggae station, broadcasting every week. Go to wayoutradio.com for more. So I just want to tell you guys about the brand new fan club we've just launched. It's absolutely amazing. You can choose from contributing £5, £10 or £20 per month to keep the station alive, pay our guests handsomely and keep music money in the musician's pocket and in the punk world and in the reggae world. So find out more about that at wayoutradio.com. Thank you very much.